Hi there, come on in. You know, if you're an ice angler, you're probably as disappointed as I am in the weather. It just hasn't been here, but we went perch fishing. We're going to take you two places. Up to Houghton Lake, pull a jumbo through the ice, and we'll head out to Saginaw Bay where we'll get into some furious perch action. Then we're going to head up to Quebec, do installment 2 on this Caribou story. I prove without question that I am not Fred Bear. I'm Fred Trost. It's Thursday night, time for Michigan Outdoors. The winter of '88, very little snow but plenty of ice in Saginaw Bay, and the quest for yellow perch goes on.
When the big ones come in, the big ones usually hit the bigger hook, or the higher hook. Hold it like that. Pull it right up underneath the ice, and that's where the big ones are usually.
So when are the big ones going to get here?
I don't think they're here. I think they were here and they're long gone.
Dave King doesn't hold out much hope for the jumbos, but Mike Hudson, well, he had some decent luck.
So did you get any good ones?
Well, I'll show you this one we got, and we've been trying to get more of them, but it's big. That's about the average size that we've been getting here. So.
These are the perch that draw thousands of anglers to Saginaw Bay, and Bud Whitney from Flint, he was catching a few.
We had like 19, 20, something like that were all 9 inches and better last Saturday, and then a lot of 7 and 8s. But come out here today and ain't doing it.
While many anglers fish on the open ice, Bob Garner and Alan Bedore retreated to the Shanty, where perch were coming up to the holes.
Oh, look at, he's biting at the leader of the hook. He's not even biting at the eye.
They're pretty finicky on what they'll take?
Not when they're biting. They're pretty much what you put down there they take. Except for, I'd say the bigger fish will come on a bigger spoon, maybe a fisheye, sometimes a minnows. I'd say the fisheye is the best though.
Fisheyes and minnows. What about waxworms, cornbores, those things?
I never use them. I don't have much faith in them. Smaller fish to me come on them, I'd say.
What are your favorite baits? You started out with the jack spoon. That seems to be kind of a big favorite up here.
Yeah, the jacks. My favorite is the jack's hook, and I like to use a big spoons, the old Russian hook, the old style Russian hooks. That's my 2 best hooks that I use. It's about all I use actually.
And lots of times you don't put any bait at all on those, right?
Not on a jack's hook. They just got an artificial bead on them, and on the big spoons, I use fish eyes, and if I'm not getting nothing, I'll try a minnow now and then.
Fish bite much more delicately in the winter than in the summer. If you watch carefully, you see they open their gills and suck in the bait. They don't strike it. It's sometimes hard to tell when you have a bite. They can inhale a lure and then spit it out. You never know they were there.
There we go.
Nice job. All right.
Another one.
When the action picks up, so does the excitement.
Oh, there's a nicer one. A little bit nicer anyway.
Yeah.
The charm of perch fishing is in the action. The jack spoons often have the barbs pinched down so the fish come off the hooks
All
easier.
there was to it.
Look at this perch right in the hole.
It isn't often we can tape fish taking the lures, but today they were really performing.
Oh, no.
You want that smell. You know what, that's a good sign. When there's smelt in like that, then the perch are heavy. These are all my grandpa's old wives' tails.
Oh, look at the size of that perch. Don't move.
Come right. Turn around, hook.
Yeah. Don't let him up.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hold that one up. Let's see that one.
Now those are starting to get into some nice perch.
Yeah, that was a nice one, hey?
Yeah.
Perfect eating size, and Bob Garner is inspired.
Okay, perch all over the place. We just picked up 3, 4, 5, I don't know. Oh my God, look at them all over down here.
Yep, they're in darn frenzy here. Just throw them on the floor, Bob.
Okay, yeah.
I got it hooked in my hat.
There's another one. There's a good one.
Oh, yes, that's nice.
All right, Bob.
That's Saginaw Bay perch on a good day. But let's take a moment to pull perch through the ice Higgins Lake style, that big, deep, clear lake just north of Houghton Lake. This school of perch is about 16 feet down. That's how clear the water is. Higgins Lake perch are good sized, and DNR wildlife biologist Gary Bichelle uses an interesting reel.
Got him?
Saginaw Bay, the Great Lakes, or inland lakes, there's hardly a more popular winter fish than yellow perch in Michigan outdoors.
Roger Bug of Mile caught this 5.5-pound smallmouth bass on a Mepps spinner fishing the Mile Pond. This almost 8-pound bowfin was caught on a Mepps muskie spinner on the Ausable River by Dan Harris of Flint. Robert Gonzalez of Ecorse landed this 21-pound muskie in the Detroit River using a number 9 Rapala. Here's a trophy of a lifetime, a 13-point elk taken by Ronald Stepke of Clarkston in Montmorency County. Now there are doggone few walleyes as big as this 12.25-pound trophy that Andrew Smith of Muskegon caught through the ice on a crocodile on Muskegon Lake. James Schraben of Portland was hunting just after 12 noon on opening day in the big hill country of Sheboygan County when this massive 10-pointer snuck up behind him. James turned quickly, made a good shot, and while everyone else was eating lunch, he dragged out this trophy buck. Now, sorry you had a late lunch opening day, James, but congratulations on becoming our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Deer Hunter of the Week. Demand for turkey permits was at an all-time high, and even though more applications were available this year, many sporting goods stores and DNR offices simply ran out. The Department of Treasury has announced that anyone filing a tax return can contribute to the non-game checkoff fund. Now, prior to this year, only those who received refunds could participate. And according to a DNR survey, Lake Erie walleye anglers in Michigan waters caught 2 million walleyes in 1988. That's a 120% increase over 1987. The Michigan Wildlife Habitat Foundation is promoting a new program to fill rights-of-ways with wildlife habitat. The first project is in conjunction with Consumers Power on Saginaw's Crow Island. An old friend and former DNR wildlife chief Ed Mikula is retiring tomorrow after 37 years as a wildlife biologist. Ed is nationally known for his expertise on waterfowl. Harry Webster, hatchery manager for DNR's Fish Division, has been inducted into the National Fish Culture Hall of Fame.
A few years ago, Fred Trost noticed a problem at Houghton Lake that's really magnified by the large and shallow nature of the lake. And that is that it's difficult to have good, consistent fishing from shore during the summer months. Now, you really do need a boat to do well, and if you have a boat, poking around the weed beds that start just out of casting range of shore is fun and it's productive as heck. And that's why the Outdoors Forever project of building a world-class pier on Houghton Lake is so important. A long enough pier could put grandpas and grandkids, along with handicappers and the boatless, within easy reach of the fish. Already, the Michigan Wildlife Habitat Foundation is committed to making sure that there's habitat in place around the pier to attract and to keep the fish coming in. Tom Hamp, editor of the Houghton Lake Resorter, has called for local support in a glowing editorial. Other groups from around the state have offered help. Support for the pier is growing fast, and that's good. It's fitting that our state's largest inland lake should offer for many folks their best opportunity to catch a fish.
Gerald Burns from Mount Clemens says he read an advertisement for a restaurant that is selling hickory grilled Michigan elk steak. How can they do this under Michigan state law? Gerald says, I thought selling wild game meat was illegal. You're right, Gerald. All fish, birds, and animals protected as game species cannot be bought or sold. But this restaurant, the Atrium Cafe in Troy, advertises natural game, not wild game. The meat on their menu is all pin-reared by licensed game farm breeders. So their elk is Michigan elk. It's just not wild Michigan elk, but it would taste practically the same.
The Ludington area Jaycees are sponsoring a winter festival at Ludington and Scottville through Sunday. At Whitehall and Montague, there's the annual Snowfari Yama Fest running Friday through Sunday. The Oldsmobile Outdoor Club holds their winter festival Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at Houghton Lake. Leonard Lee Rue III, the most publicized wildlife photographer in North America, will deliver a white-tailed deer seminar Saturday in Mount Clemens. On both Friday and Saturday nights, the Detroit chapter of Safari Club International will hold a wild game dinner. The Detroit Boat Show begins Saturday at Cobo Hall. There's a gun show Sunday at the Knights of Columbus Hall at Davison. And this weekend at Fred Trost Hunting and Fishing Museum, we'll have videos on sturgeon spearing and wildlife stories running continuously. The museum is located 1 block north of the State Police Post on Old 27 at Houghton Lake. The Central Michigan Sports Show begins February 9th and runs through Sunday. Fred, Kathy, and I will be on hand with seminars along with cooking demonstrations. The first 1,000 or so kids that fish the trout pond will get a free spool of Berkeley line as long as the supply lasts. Our Stroh's Fishing Awards banquet takes place Friday, February 24th. Saturday night will be our Stroh's Hunting Awards banquet. On Saturday during the day, we'll have our spring fishing workshop. All of these events are at the Lansing Civic Center. If you missed a number, call the Michigan Travel Bureau on Friday during working hours.
In just a moment, we're going to hop a plane and head 1,200 miles north of Montreal to part 2 of our Caribou adventure up in the Arctic in northern Quebec. But first, I have some great news for those of you around the country who have been watching Michigan Outdoors on satellite dishes. We're excited about this. Starting the 1st of April, we're going to be producing, along with Michigan Outdoors, a national version of this show that'll go out to PBS stations around the country. Now, Michigan Outdoors won't change at all. Well, we'll keep improving it. We're going to make little improvements like, well, I'm going to start putting the trophy interviews and the stories of big fish and big deer back in the trophy book. Where do we tape these? A lot of people ask. Well, these come from our Hunting and Fishing Awards banquets. These are coming up at the end of February in Lansing. And people also ask us, do I have to be a trophy award winner to come to the banquet or a member of the family? No! Most of the people who show up are just people who are interested in seeing the displays of trophy mounts, having dinner with us, watching us tape these interviews for Michigan Outdoors. So if you're interested in those banquets, come on, call in and get a ticket or bring a group of people. We have a great time. Now, let's hop on that plane, head to the northern part of Quebec for part 2 of this adventure of Fred Trost. It is classic bow hunting form. The tundra south of Ungava Bay in northern Quebec is the land of the caribou. To the Inuit Indians, they're a source of food, and the herd in this part of Canada has been growing, some say too much for their own good. Hunters are allowed to take 2 caribou in an effort to trim the herd and balance with the long-term food supply. Traditionally, caribou have migrated en masse from summering grounds to wintering areas. But 150 miles west of Kujak, part of the herd has become somewhat resident, migrating back and forth, wandering. And this is where the camps of Safari Nordique are located. Caribou are plentiful. Each morning, our guide, Al Higley, originally from Hunt, New York, would shuttle us an hour from camp to a prime caribou crossing. Birds this far north aren't too common except for the grouse-like ptarmigan. A few bow hunters in our camp brought back ptarmigan for dinner, quite an accomplishment with a bow.
You can see how hard it is to get a ptarmigan dinner with a bow and arrow. Crying out loud, I missed them. Shot all my arrows twice. 10 times so far. Very close.
I could have chased ptarmigan all day, but we were there for caribou. and we had prepared excellent blinds for the camera and for hunting. We've seen several herds of caribou come from over the hill here, and I'm down in the valley that's right next to the river. You can see from John's camera blind the setting of this little clump of trees. They seem to cross from the other hill. Now I'm sitting in a clump of spruces in here, which is just a beautiful little blind. I have what I'm wearing, of course my hat with a bill on it because to keep the rain off of my glasses is a real problem. Suit has a hood, which is a lifesaver for keeping warm, keeping my back to the wind whenever I can. This is a Gore-Tex suit, which you need for the rain protection, including the rain pants. And my boots have to use Arctic ice fishing type of boots with felt liners. Got my bow here over against a limb. I don't knock an arrow until I see a caribou because there's no real need to, because geez, the visibility is great. I sit over here on my bucket, which also keeps things dry. It has a swivel seat. My mittens I put on when I'm cold, otherwise I'm ready for some action. Now this blind, the reason that we put it right here is out in front you can see crisscrossing trails, many trails from where the caribou crossed the river. You can see behind me from the camera blind a trail coming across here. In fact, John's camera blind is right up the hill. It's right almost on the crest of the hill, and he's hunkered down so the caribou can't see him. It's a perfect setting. Caribou crossing from many directions, and hopefully we'll get one today. I hope. We sat and waited, and then suddenly, but quietly, they appeared. They're going to wind me. The wind is blowing towards them. Let's see what happens. 70 yards away, directly downwind, the bull either sees us or winds us. He wants to come down to the lower plateau where I'm waiting with my bow and John Ford is behind me with the camera. While white-tailed deer rely heavily on their noses to detect danger, it's my conclusion that caribou rely far more on their eyes. Motion in the trees puts them at a distance. Your scent in the air, at least according to my experience, doesn't spook them nearly as much as you'd think. Some smaller ones working their way right over here. I think I can get a shot. We had caribou around us for at least 15 minutes, but our moving in the blind, trying to adjust for better camera angles, must have been noticeable. Once one caribou was suspicious, the rest were on edge. Maybe we'd have better luck tomorrow. The next day, I was full of anticipation. In fact, too full. I sat in the blind hour after hour, glassing, watching, scanning, and saw nothing. But I had a theory. All those caribou that descended on the blind the evening before had to come from that plateau above. My curiosity was killing me. I wanted to explore that plateau on my own to see if I couldn't find a better spot for John and I to sit. While I stalked the caribou on the plateau, John stayed back at the camera blind, overlooking my empty blind. That's the clump of trees on the left. Can you believe this luck? All I would have had to do was be patient. Not 20 minutes after I left my blind, a large herd of caribou grazed its way up that valley by my blind, walked right past cameraman John Ford on the hill. They walked downwind from John, not 20 yards. He was excited, and they seemed only curious. There's my blind, empty. I left my vests and heavy clothing sitting there, not a half hour old, not 10 feet from those caribou. They sauntered by on both sides. What does that tell you about patience? Well, after cruising by the blind that I so carefully prepared, the whole herd passed by John. This one, he says, should have winded him. It was downwind about 12 yards away. Perhaps it did, but it wasn't terribly frightened. "45 minutes later, I was back in the blind, and towards dark I spotted two small bulls working along the river. I'd have to get closer for a shot, so I made a stalk. One spotted me, and I had a split second to make a running shot. All in all, I was pretty darn close. I think Fred Bear would have been proud of me. That arrow, as you can see, may have even bumped that bull's antlers. If not, it was just a whisker away. Was I disappointed? No, I was excited. I had a chance, and I came close. To me, that was a thrill with the bow and arrow, but not as big a thrill as you'll see next week. I move in on this record book bull across that marsh and up that hillside. That's coming up next week in Caribou, the final episode.
In the fish world, what is the opposite of catadromous? An anadromous fish, such as a salmon, migrates from the sea to a freshwater river to spawn. A catadromous fish does the opposite, living in freshwater and migrating to saltwater to spawn. The American eel is catadromous.
William Wiswell from Grand Rapids calls this his wabbit recipe for lemon rabbit. Kathy Beitler, what is this? Snowshoe or
Snowshoe, exactly. You can tell
Snowshoe
by
hare,
the
not-
bigger, meatier pieces of
not
rabbit.
cottontail rabbit?
No. And this is kind of like a sweet and sour recipe. And you're going to brown your rabbit pieces first and then add your different ingredients, really. You got vinegar and ketchup, brown sugar, and lemonade. Not lemon juice, but lemonade.
Looks like a sort of a strange barbecue, sweet and sour.
Yeah, like I say, it's more or less sweet and sour. And then, actually, all these are just going to kind of complement each other.
Well, that was the sweet and the sour, the lemonade and the sugar.
Right.
And vinegar, more sour.
With
ketchup?
the ketchup. It's just kind of sweet itself. And then you're going to put everything after the rabbit pieces are brown. You go ahead and put it all into a crock pot and let it cook that way. And it just smells so good.
How long do you cook it?
About 4 or 5 hours.
Wow,
So,
does that look good?
yeah, you just want it to cook really done. And then you're going to pour everything back into a frying pan to thicken it.
Oh,
There is a pan there.
I didn't see that. It looked like you're pouring it on the stove.
And you're going to thicken it with cornstarch, and it makes a really nice gravy.
This is going to be interesting. Serve this on rice and see if, of course, Bob Garner's our rabbit man. See what he thinks about this.
This is exactly why you go rabbit hunting. I mean, the beagles and the way you hunt rabbits are a nice touch, but rabbit to me tastes good, and this is a really different but good way to eat it.
Oh, it's very, very good.
I think this is also how you pick up some lemonade at the store to mix with this.
Yeah.
This sweet and sour sauce that he makes with this is
incredible.
great.
A lot different than it would be made with the lemon juice. Lemonade really makes it.
He calls it lemon rabbit, but I don't really notice that it's that strong. Do you?
No, I don't notice the lemon at all. In fact, I'm not crazy about lemon in a recipe, but this sweet and sour sauce is just extremely good.
It's the best.
I like Chinese food, and it's every bit as good as anything I've gotten in a Chinese
It's a light
restaurant.
touch.
Very
The
delicate.
light touch is very delicate on that. So what do you like best, the sweet or the sour?
You got to have them both. I mean, that's like rabbit hunting without beagles.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
Like a copy of tonight's recipe, we'll send it to you along with the other 7 January, February TV recipes, all in the Outdoor Digest magazine, along with Kathy Beitler's article on cooking fish and wild game. Her way, good tips. You'll find lots of articles on hunting, fishing, shooting, sporting knives, wildlife art, plus the Outdoors Forever section full of special information for handicapper and senior sportsmen. This issue focuses on pier fishing, our project for 1989. You'll find rules and an entry form for the Stroh's Hunting and Fishing Awards on page 53. For a free January-February issue, just drop me a line at Fred Trost's Outdoors Club, P.O. Box 1775, East Lansing, Michigan, 48826. Before we take a look at our guide report of the fishing conditions, let's look at our deer forecast from the DNR. With the deer severity index, it's actually better than last year in many areas. In the Upper Peninsula, last year's index is first and this year's second. Look, 43, 41, 45, 35, 34, 37. Get down to the Lower Peninsula, 27, 18 around Kalkaska, a little higher than that in Gaylord, but I tell you, the deer are in good shape this season. An ice report. Well, I have to say, you know that because of this weather, ice is unsafe in many areas. 12 inches, Houghton Lake. 12 inches in many of the major parts of the lower peninsula, up to 24 in the upper peninsula. But a lot of this ice isn't in too good a shape, and it's going to take some good cold weather to make it safe. Our fishing reports, very frankly, it's improving a little bit, but most anglers are waiting for March. Getting a couple steelhead. Suckers are even running. They're catching them down in the southwest. A couple steelhead, a couple walleye. The hot spot for walleye, Saginaw River and Tittabawassee. This is where we're going to try to do our walleye story. But around the state, basically, the anglers are waiting for the last ice conditions. First ice didn't pan out too good. Ice fishing hasn't been all that great. We're hoping last ice will be. So, depending on the weather, why should you get outdoors this weekend? Because it's a great place to be. See you next week. Next week, you have to join me here on Michigan Outdoors. Installment number 3, the conclusion of the Quebec caribou hunt. I had an encounter at close range with a record book caribou. Now, those of you who remember opening day of deer season this past year when I couldn't see the buck, whoa, this is a whole different story. In fact, I got that caribou to come in close. How did it turn out? How did I stack up with my bow? You're going to have to join me next week and find out right here on PBS.